The dust-choked winds of the Wyoming plains howled like a wounded animal that fateful autumn night in 1887, whipping through the creaky wooden fences of the old wagon yard where forgotten relics of the frontier lay scattered like bones in a graveyard. Under the indifferent gaze of a sliver moon, a lone cowboy named Jack Harlan, his face etched with the scars of too many hard winters and harder losses, stumbled upon a sight that stopped him colder than the frost biting at his boots. A young woman, no more than 25, curled up in the shadow of a broken-down Conestoga wagon, her thin dress clinging to her shivering form like a second skin, her breath shallow and ragged against the encroaching chill that threatened to claim her as it had so many drifters before. She was a ghost in the making, abandoned by the world, her dark hair matted with dirt and despair, and in that moment, Jack's heart, long hardened by the death of his wife and child to a merciless fever years ago, cracked open just enough to let in a sliver of forgotten compassion. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, like this video, drop a comment below sharing your own story of unexpected mercy, share it with someone who needs a reminder that hope still exists, and subscribe to Moments of Love for more tales that warm the soul and mend the heart. Jack Harlan had ridden the trails from Texas to Montana, herding cattle through blizzards and bandit ambushes, his life a monotonous grind of saddle sores and solitary campfires that did little to chase away the ghosts of his past. He'd lost Sarah and little Tommy to that fever in a one-room cabin on the edge of nowhere, the kind of loss that turns a man's soul into a barren wasteland, where emotions wither like unwatered crops. Now, at 38, he was just another weathered face in a sea of cowboys passing through the bustling town of Cheyenne, where the railroad's iron veins pumped life into the frontier but left the broken souls to fend for themselves in the shadows. The wagon yard was his temporary refuge, a place to stable his horse and catch a few hours of sleep before the next drive, but that night, as he dismounted and led his bay mare to the trough, his eyes caught the faint movement under the wagon, a bundle of rags that resolved into a human form, her knees drawn tight to her chest, her lips blue from the cold that seeped through the ground like poison. He hesitated, the rational part of him whispering to walk away, to mind his own business in a world where meddling often led to trouble. But something deeper stirred, a memory of Sarah's gentle eyes pleading for help in her final hours, and before he knew it, he was pulling the wool blanket from his bedroll, draping it over her with hands that trembled not from the cold but from the vulnerability of the act. She stirred slightly under the warmth, her eyes fluttering open to reveal a gaze haunted by shadows Jack recognized all too well, eyes that had seen betrayal, loss, and the cruel indifference of fate. Her name was Eliza Thorne, though he wouldn't learn that until dawn broke and the first rays of sun painted the yard in hesitant gold. Eliza had come from the East, a seamstress in Boston whose dreams of a better life shattered when her husband, a gambler with a temper as volatile as dynamite, squandered their savings and left her bruised and penniless on the streets. Desperate, she'd boarded a train westward, chasing whispers of opportunity in the mining towns, but the journey had stripped her bare, robbed by opportunistic thieves, abandoned by fair-weather companions, and finally collapsing in this forsaken yard after days of walking with blistered feet and an empty stomach. The blanket Jack offered was more than fabric, it was a lifeline, a silent promise that not all men were monsters, and as she clutched it tighter, tears freezing on her cheeks, the first threads of an unlikely bond began to weave between them, fragile as spider silk but resilient in the face of the storm brewing on the horizon. The days that followed were a tentative dance of survival and suspicion, as Jack, against his better judgment, extended his stay in Cheyenne to watch over her. He shared his meager rations, hardtack and jerky from his saddlebags, watching as color slowly returned to her cheeks, though her eyes remained guarded, flitting away whenever he drew too near. Eliza's challenges were manifold. The physical toll of her ordeal left her weak, her body racked with coughs that echoed the tuberculosis scares she'd heard about in the crowded tenements back home, and the emotional scars ran deeper still, a fortress built from years of abuse that made trust feel like a fool's gamble. She struggled with the shame of her situation, whispering to herself in the quiet moments that she was unworthy of kindness, that Jack's generosity would surely come with strings attached, as it always had before. Jack, too, wrestled with his demons, helping her dredged up memories he'd buried under layers of stoic silence, nights when he'd wake sweating from dreams of Sarah's lifeless form, questioning why he deserved a second chance when they hadn't. Yet, in the wagon yard's makeshift shelter, amid the creak of settling wood and the distant lowing of cattle, they found small comforts, Jack teaching her to mend his torn shirt with her seamstress skills, Eliza sharing stories of the bustling Boston streets that painted pictures in his mind of a world beyond the endless plains. As autumn deepened into the grip of winter, the challenges mounted like gathering clouds, testing the fragile alliance they'd forged. A brutal nor'easter swept through Cheyenne, blanketing the town in snow that turned the wagon yard into a frozen tomb, forcing them to huddle together under shared blankets in an abandoned stable, their breaths mingling in the icy air as Jack fought to keep a small fire alive with scavenged wood. Eliza's health faltered, the cold aggravated an old injury from her husband's rages, a cracked rib that never fully healed, and she lay feverish, her delirium pulling confessions from her lips about the nights she'd fled in terror, hiding in alleys while he searched with drunken fury. Jack, his own hands chapped and bleeding from chopping ice for water, felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, a reminder of his failure to save his family, but this time, he refused to yield, riding into town through the blizzard to barter his last silver dollar for medicinal herbs from a grizzled apothecary. The storm's fury mirrored their internal turmoils, suspense building with each howling gust, as whispers from the townsfolk reached their ears, rumors of Eliza's husband, a man named Harlan Crow, no relation but a cruel twist of fate, tracking her westward with a bounty on her head for desertion, his gambling debts fueling a vengeful pursuit that could shatter their budding sanctuary. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, things began to change, the narrative shifting from mere survival to something profound, like the first green shoots piercing frozen soil after a harsh winter. Jack's acts of quiet heroism, standing guard through sleepless nights, sharing tales of his lost family to bridge the chasm of her distrust, chipped away at Eliza's walls, revealing a woman of quiet strength and hidden dreams, one who longed to build a life free from fear. In return, her presence thawed his frozen heart, her laughter, rare but genuine when he recounted a comical cattle stampede, echoed like music in his ears, reminding him that joy could still exist amid sorrow. They ventured beyond the wagon yard as the snow melted into muddy spring, Jack securing work on a nearby ranch and insisting Eliza join as a cook's assistant, her nimble fingers earning respect from the rough cowboys who saw in her the resilience of the frontier spirit. But suspense lingered, building steadily as letters arrived from the east, cryptic warnings from old acquaintances that Crow was closing in, his shadow lengthening over their fragile peace, forcing Jack to confront his own capacity for violence in defense of something, or someone, worth fighting for. The climax came on a sweltering summer evening, the air thick with the scent of sagebrush and impending rain, when Crow appeared like a specter from Eliza's nightmares, his pistol gleaming under the setting sun as he cornered them in the wagon yard where it all began. Words flew like bullets first, accusations of theft and betrayal, but Jack stood firm, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart, declaring that Eliza was no longer his to claim, that kindness had forged a bond stronger than any chain of matrimony. The struggle was raw and visceral, a blur of fists and dust as Jack disarmed the intruder, not with lethal force but with a wrestler's hold born from years on the trail, subduing Crow long enough for the sheriff, alerted by ranch hands, to haul him away in irons. In the aftermath, as bruises bloomed and adrenaline faded, Eliza collapsed into Jack's arms, her sobs a release of years of pent-up agony, and in that embrace, both their lives transformed irrevocably, he finding purpose in protection, she discovering the courage to love without fear. Years unfolded like pages in a well-worn book, their story evolving into one of quiet triumph on a small homestead they claimed together, where fields of golden wheat swayed under vast skies, and children, two boys with Jack's sturdy build and Eliza's bright eyes, filled the air with laughter that banished the ghosts of yesteryear. Jack, once a wandering soul, rooted himself in the soil of second chances, while Eliza bloomed into a woman of unyielding grace, her past a distant scar rather than an open wound. Their lives, forever altered by that simple blanket in the wagon yard, became a testament to the redemptive power of compassion, inspiring neighbors and travelers alike with tales whispered around campfires of how one act of humanity can rewrite destinies. If this story of unexpected kindness and profound change has touched your heart, making you reflect on the blankets, literal or metaphorical, we offer to those in need, please like, comment, and share this video to spread its message far and wide. Before we end, drop a comment below with the line, "Kindness changes everything," if you've ever experienced or witnessed a moment like this that forever altered a life.